The whispers followed Marcus Evans like shadows as he walked through the school gate, his son's small hand clutched in his. He pretended not to notice the stares, the barely concealed smirks, the way the mothers huddled together watching him struggle with Jamie's backpack while balancing a thermos of coffee that had already spilled twice on his wrinkled shirt. But today would be different. Today would change everything. If you're moved by stories of resilience and unexpected moments that remind us what truly matters, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartfelt stories that celebrate the human spirit. Marcus hadn't always been the odd one out. 3 years ago, he'd been half of what everyone called the perfect couple: successful architect, beautiful wife, adorable son. The American dream packaged in a 4-bedroom colonial with a white picket fence. Then came the diagnosis that shattered everything. Stage 4. Terminal. 8 months later, he was a widower trying to figure out how to be both mother and father to a 4-year-old who still asked when mommy was coming home. The morning routine was always chaotic. Marcus would wake at 5:30 a.m., review client blueprints until 6:15, then wake Jamie, make breakfast, pack lunch, find clean clothes, and somehow get them both presentable enough to face the world. Most days, he failed at the last part. Today was no exception. "Daddy, my shoes are different," Jamie pointed out as they rushed toward the first-grade classroom. Marcus looked down at his son's feet, one blue sneaker, one red. He closed his eyes briefly. "We'll fix it tomorrow, buddy. Promise." The group of mothers near the entrance, the self-proclaimed PDA perfects, didn't miss a thing. Their leader, Vanessa Mitchell, with her immaculate blonde bob and designer athleisure wear, raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Looks like someone had another rough morning," she stage-whispered to her friends. Poor Jamie. Some children just don't have the benefit of a proper home environment. The word stung, but Marcus had grown accustomed to the pain. He'd heard it all before, the implications that a father couldn't possibly provide what a child needed, the pitying looks, the unsolicited advice. He'd learned to smile politely and keep moving. What he couldn't ignore was the effect it was having on Jamie. His once outgoing son had grown quieter at school, more hesitant to join activities. The teacher had mentioned he sometimes sat alone at lunch. It broke Marcus's heart in ways he couldn't express. "Have a great day, champ," Marcus said, kneeling to hug Jamie goodbye. "Remember what we talked about? You're the bravest kid I know." Jamie nodded solemnly, his eyes, so like his mother's, serious beyond his years. "I remember, Daddy." As Marcus turned to leave, he heard Vanessa's voice again. "I'm organizing the Spring Festival Committee. We need volunteers who can actually commit to being here consistently and on time." Her gaze pointedly swept over Marcus's coffee-stained shirt. "Reliable parents only, please." Something in Marcus snapped. He'd spent 3 years taking the high road, smiling through the judgment, the exclusion, the constant implication that he was somehow less than the other parents because he was doing it alone, because he was a man, because sometimes he sent his kid to school with mismatched shoes. He turned back, words forming on his lips, words he'd regret, words that would only make things worse for Jamie. But before he could speak, a small voice cut through the schoolyard chatter. "My daddy is reliable." Jamie stood there, all 3.5 feet of him, staring up at Vanessa Mitchell with unwavering certainty. "My daddy works all night sometimes so he can take me to school in the morning. He learns to make braids for my hair even though his fingers are too big. He reads me 2 stories every night, even when he's really tired." The playground fell silent. Even the kindergartners stopped running. "When I had a bad dream last week, he sat in my room all night in the uncomfortable chair. He keeps all of Mommy's pictures in a special book and helps me remember her when I forget things. He never forgets things about her." Jamie's voice grew stronger with each word. "He taught me how to tie my shoes and ride a bike and be brave when things are scary. And he's teaching me that it's okay to be different." The little boy looked down at his mismatched sneakers and then back up at the stunned faces around him. My daddy says what matters isn't if everything looks perfect. What matters is love. And my daddy has the most love of anybody. Marcus couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His son, his shy, quiet son who rarely spoke to strangers, stood like a tiny warrior defending his father's honor. Vanessa's perfectly composed face crumpled slightly. For the first time, Marcus saw something beyond judgment in her eyes, recognition, perhaps. Understanding. She began, but seemed unable to find words. Another mother stepped forward, Eliza Ramirez, who always smiled at Marcus but never quite approached him. Jamie's right, she said quietly. And I think we could all learn something from that. She turned to Marcus. I'm a single mom. My husband left when my daughter was 2. I've been too intimidated to talk to you because you seem to have it all together in ways I don't. Marcus almost laughed. Me? Have it together? You show up. Every day. That's more than some parents with perfect lives manage to do. One by one, other parents stepped forward. The dad who worked night shifts and was always half asleep at drop-off. The grandmother raising her grandchildren after her daughter's accident. The mom of twins who was battling chronic illness. They had all been there all along, the imperfect parents, the ones struggling, the ones doing their best with what they had. They had just been invisible to each other, each thinking they were the only ones failing at this impossible task of raising children in a world that expected perfection. Vanessa Mitchell stood silent for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She knelt down to Jamie's level. You're right, she said simply. And I was wrong. Very wrong. She looked up at Marcus. The spring festival needs all kinds of parents. Especially the reliable ones who teach their children what really matters. That afternoon, when Marcus arrived at pickup, something had shifted. There was a space for him in the parents' circle. Invitations to playdates. Offers to carpool. Phone numbers exchanged. And most importantly, there was Jamie, running toward him with a smile that lit up his whole face, mismatched shoes slapping against the pavement. Daddy. Ms. Mitchell asked if we could help decorate for the spring festival. She said I have really good ideas. Marcus scooped his son into his arms, holding him tight, marveling at the wisdom that sometimes came in the smallest packages. You know what, buddy? I think that sounds perfect. That night, as Marcus tucked Jamie into bed, he asked the question that had been on his mind all day. What made you speak up like that this morning? You're usually so quiet at school. Jamie yawned, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. Remember when you told me that sometimes being brave isn't about not being scared? It's about doing the right thing even when you're scared? Marcus nodded, his throat tight. I was scared. But they were being mean to you, and that's not right. Mom always said we have to stand up when things aren't right. Marcus brushed the hair from his son's forehead, thinking of his wife, of her fierce sense of justice, her unwavering courage. She lived on in their son in ways he was only beginning to understand. She would be so proud of you, he whispered. So am I. Jamie smiled sleepily. Can I wear different shoes tomorrow too? Marcus laughed, a real laugh that felt like healing. Absolutely. In fact, I might do the same. As Jamie drifted off to sleep, Marcus sat in the uncomfortable chair beside the bed, watching his son's peaceful face. The journey of single parenthood remained daunting. There would still be chaotic mornings, still be days when he felt overwhelmed and inadequate. But something fundamental had changed. He was no longer walking the path alone. And more importantly, he had living proof that he must be doing something right after all. His son, this remarkable, compassionate, brave little person, was evidence that love, imperfect as it might be, was enough. The next morning, Marcus arrived at the school gate wearing one brown loafer and one black one. Jamie giggled all the way to his classroom, and when they passed Vanessa Mitchell, she looked down, smiled, and showed them her own secret rebellion, 2 different colored socks peeking out from her perfect designer shoes. Sometimes the greatest revolutions start small. Sometimes they start with mismatched shoes and the courage of a 6-year-old boy who knew, with absolute certainty, that his daddy was a hero. And sometimes, they change an entire community, one brave step at a time.